Luma curves are terrific, but there's more to color curves than just Luma. And I'll show you here the red, green, and blue curves. With this shot, I've used the color board to just do a quick balance, just moving the shadows and the highlights around, and you can see from the Luma waveform over here that it's pretty balanced. Now back in color curves, I can increase the contrast by adding a bit of an S-curve. But that's not all that I want to do. The red channel here lets me do some simple things and some complex things. So if I push it up, it's like I'm increasing the red channel. Now this is a little bit like pushing the color board or color wheels towards red in midtones. You can see, because I'm adjusting the point here in the midtones, that that's what I'm doing. But it's not quite that simple. The first thing to note is that this Preserve Luma checkbox is really important when you're adjusting anything other than Luma. So if I turn off that Preserve Luma checkbox, things will behave differently. Now if you're watching the RGB parade scopes, this will be really obvious. With Preserve Luma off, only the red channel is being affected. With Preserve Luma on, in fact, all the channels get affected to try to keep the brightness the same. Now, depending on your goals, you'll want to leave Preserve Luma on or off. If you want absolute control, absolute precision on, I want to change red or I want to change green, you'd turn Preserve Luma off. And then you'd have to manage the overall brightness, because obviously increasing red is going to increase the overall brightness. And you can see the Luma channel changing as we do that. But if you only want to change color, just leave it on the defaults with Preserve Luma on, and then you can push the red up, knowing that the Luma waveform is not changing at all. The brightness is going to be kept exactly as it is. And to be honest, that's probably what you'll want most of the time. Now, that's easy enough, pushing something up towards red or down in green, which is going to make it look, a lot pinker. But you can do a lot more. I'll just reset both of those. What if I push highlights up and then keep the shadows locked? What does that do? It increases the reds where there was already a lot of red. So these rooftops get more red and nothing happens down here in the water. So if I push this back down and back up, then what this is doing is the lighter parts of the image are going to become more red. Why is the sky being affected? Because it's part of the brighter areas of the image. Remember that white includes all the channels. So pushing up the higher areas of any of these red, green, or blue curves is going to affect the lighter areas of the image more. Let's have a look in a different curve. I'll reset that one. I'll lock 2 points on green and drag down in green. So what does that mean? It means the shadows lose some green. Because we're preserving Luma, it effectively increases blue and red and makes the shadows more pink. And that means I can do an S-curve. So doing an S-curve on green gives me color contrast, which is very much a popular look today with stronger filters on social media. So the S-curve is a good idea. That works really well. What about blue? Well, why don't we do an anti-S-curve? So now I've reduced the contrast in blue. And this gives me a nice washed out look, but it hasn't really affected the red or green colors. So I've raised the shadows on blue and I've lowered the highlights in blue, which is going to tint them a little to the opposite of blue and make things look a little bit more yellow. I'll just show you the before and then after. That was just a reset and then an undo. And you can see over here in the parade, undo one more time, that it's lifting the blue shadows as well as knocking down the blue highlights. So there is a lot you can do, but you'll probably want to keep this relatively simple at first. It is worth exploring exactly what you can do, But probably the simplest and most effective thing is trying some color contrast out on one of these channels. There is a technique you can use with color curves here, which is not obvious at all, but is extremely powerful. That's to use the eyedroppers here on red, green, and blue, which don't do the same as the eyedropper on Luma. I'll show you that next.